we have to go through the descent that takes us to those places within ourselves where we hold the deepest pain, the deepest shadows that we've discarded from ourselves. That's where our greatest power lies. The feminine path is really a spiral. I feel like I'm going backwards. It's like we're never going backwards. We're always going forwards, but with newfound awareness. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are, right? It's about the unraveling of finding the core essence of who you are and letting that become louder and magnetic and radiant.
Francesca Raffa, thank you so much for being here. So I came across your profile kind of synchronistically as I was shifting the direction of the podcast to be more aligned with feminine reclamation. So you are a feminine liberation mentor, intuitive channel, and vocal alchemist. Can you share a little bit more about what is that? What does that look like? And what do you do?
Yes, that's a great question. Whenever we refer to the feminine, it's always like this, what do you do? And I always like to poise it back to like it's not about what you do, it's about who you are, right? It's about the unraveling of finding the core essence of who you are and letting that become louder and magnetic and radiant. So to answer the question, the journey is about the unraveling, and I came back to this core of who I am. And so that is what I support women in, is stripping back the conditionings of that which they have learned to be through the generations, through their own family systems, through their culture, and really getting back to the core essence of who they are and what they came here to be. And so through that, we delayer. It's a process of like what I like to call embodied delayering, because it's the feminine. We're always working in the body. We're not going out there. We're not searching for anything, because everything we have and need and hold is within ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to return to this because I'm really curious to know your journey and how you got into this work. But just to follow this thread that you brought in, or how I'm connecting with it, it seems like the spiritual path that a woman walks is exactly related to what you're saying right now. It's this deconditioning and this deconstructing. And it feels like it's very different from the journey a man walks. And I don't know if there's anything you want to speak to about this, just the spiritual path that a woman embarks on.
Yes. It's funny because when you say this word spiritual path, and path really stands out for me, it's like when you think of a path, you often think it's like a kind of straight line that you're walking, like a path. And the feminine path is really a spiral. And a lot of this awakening for me started with connecting to the symbol of the spiral, having an understanding and having a very deep, for unknown reason why I was so drawn to the spiral. Even as a child, I was like always doodling spirals. And now I see it, because the feminine path walks in this spiral aspect. And again, it comes back to the point of the spiral is the core of who you are. And then we walk this spiral, we walk around, and we are like layering ourselves. And then sometimes we have to go backwards on the spiral to find something with new awareness to heal. And then we move back round. So it's like almost like we're always weaving webs or walking in. And often people say, it's like, yeah, but I feel like I'm going backwards. It's like, we're never going backwards. We're always going forwards, but with newfound awareness.
Do you feel like men experience this? And maybe it's hard to speak to like a man's experience, but just from what you've observed, like that, the difference, I feel like there is one.
I guess I'm going to speak from the experience of when I have worked with men and how I present the feminine work to them, right? So that they understand it, because men require a lot more of a logical, conceptual understanding of a process to be able to feel safe to go into it. Whereas, and I'm not saying that's not the same for all women, because there's a lot of women that also require this, because we are so conditioned from the masculine way. But then when we start, going back into the roots, we remember. But from a man's perspective, it's almost like they don't have the easy, accessible, like grasp as women do. Like we are so deeply connected to the nature cycles within our own cycles that we move through with menstruation, and men, they don't have that, right? So on their aspect, they have to have more of a logical conceptual understanding of something first, and then they have to go into an experience. I often find that a lot of men are more drawn to plant medicine to be able to touch that kind of experience that women can access naturally when we're on our bleed, for example, right? That when we're in our void
Mm.
state, when we're in and out of consciousness naturally.
Yeah, that's interesting. That really resonates. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, I could see that with the plants, with plant
Mm.
medicine with men, because women just naturally have a way of tapping in. I mean, and it seems like there's the biological component, like being in a
Mm.
woman's body and just being connected to cyclical intelligence, but then also the conditioning, right? There's that piece as well that men aren't conditioned to, embrace their feminine
Yeah.
in that way so it seems like a combination of both things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that sense of, for men, it's the emotion, accessing their emotions are weakness. And that's what we are relearning now, right? That actually
Yeah.
our emotions are our own navigation to
Mhm.
understanding how we move and operate in
Mhm.
this world. Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. So when I was reading your Instagram, when I first came across your profile, you had something about moving through difficult relationships and a journey
Mm.
with substances. And that really landed for me personally. I feel like it's an entry point for women, like almost like this arc that women go through is difficult relationships. I don't think I've met a woman who hasn't gone through a relationship with a man who's kind of like narcissistic. I don't know if you're familiar with the term Bluebeard. It's like that inner predator. It's like this mythological story or archetype. And it's like it brings women into their feminine maturity. They wake up to the naivete. I always feel like I'd
Hmm.
never say that word right. Naivete. It's always weird. But they're kind of like moving away from the shadow expression of the maiden. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, how does all of this land for you?
Oh, as you're speaking, it's just like I'm getting such a whew in my chest, right? Because it's
Mm.
true. There is this initiation that one must have the relationship to be the mirror that takes us back into this where our attachments or where our abandonments lie within love. And I feel there is so many layers to this, and there's and spirals. But of course, when we are trying to come into a space of inner union within ourselves, uh, then there is the mirrors that we are met with, and I do believe everyone that comes into our life is here to teach us, show us, and reveal something more about ourselves. Everyone is a mirror. And so these relationships, for me personally, what happened was I was met with this mirror that was showing me all of the ways that I was abusing myself, through this physical, emotional abuse, but those were all that's what was all going on within me, how I self-betrayal, the self-abandonment, the way that I was so deeply attached and needing love, right? Because I didn't know, or I couldn't access um, the source of love that is within me. So that was the journey, is like that showed me the 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 amount of abuse I was moving through within myself, and then break free from that, and then I'm met with another mirror, unconditional love. And we often see this within a woman's journey, that they're in this really toxic dynamic, and they finally break away, and then it's like they're met with with someone else that comes in who's showing them a completely different side, which is also part of you, right? It's like almost the other side of you. And it's interesting because within that relationship, I kind of turned into the abuser because I didn't believe. It's what I knew. It's all I knew. Love, abuse, right? Love, hate. That the push pull dynamics that we move through, the anxious, avoidant, or the the anxious or avoidant attachment styles, as we know. And when I was met with an unconditional love, my whole system was like, no, this can't be. I have to test every single part. There's another thing I want to talk about is the feminine testing. how the feminine tests in love
Can you
in
say
such
more?
subtle ways. Yeah, in such subtle ways. We're looking for devotion. We're looking for this sense of commitment and devotion. So, particularly in that relationship, let's put it that way, is the ways I would test would be, how committed are you to this? How much of me can you hold? Right? How much of this emotional chaos can you actually hold? Right? Because that's what we are. That's the polarity aspect that we require. And so that allows us to be in our safest, fullest expression. And that's where we access all of the information from the other worlds, right? Because the feminine's role is really to be the receiver of everything. They don't necessarily have, and then the masculine aspect, and of course we have this within ourselves, but the masculine representation is to take all that we're receiving and structure it into the mental conceptualization so that it can be shared, right? These are the teachings. And of course we have that all within, but that is the polarity dynamic.
So it's kind of like the masculine is shaping what is emerging in real time. And in a sense, it's like the feminine is how I see it is like the feminine is always rooted in truth. Like she brings forth what is alive, which requires the masculine's trust in her direct experience. I often find that obviously in the expression of the masculine today, where it's oppressive and it's dismissive of the feminine's experience, and so it creates a lot of distortion in the field. I'm curious how you see that happening internally and then reflected externally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I sometimes refer to this as the pendulum swing. So to explain that a little bit more, and from what I've experienced on my journey, but also with many women that I'm supporting, it's like when there's this shift of something that is awakening, we go into this, what I call the pendulum swing, where we fall far into the feminine. Right? Because we're like, okay, now we're giving space to our emotions. Oh, wow. Now there's all of this that we need to move through that I could never see before. Now I have the space. Now I have the access. Now, okay, I'm going into my body. I can feel the safety. And then only when there's this like real rooting, and as you mentioned there, the rooting in the truth, right? The rooting of in the heart and the womb and the truth of who you are, or at the core of who you are. It's like, then you sort of swing back into the middle, and it starts to begin to heal the inner masculine. And when we refer to like the inner masculine and the inner feminine, our first point of reference to these, the inner masculine and the inner feminine, is the mother and the father, your mother and father. So often the time to be able to really be in this like union creation energy is we swing to the feminine, we work through the mother wombs. It's like we look at the ways in which the mother shaped us. And that's a really big part of my journey as well. The aspect of when being so disconnected from my physical mother, and how that relates to then being disconnected to the earth, of course. But then we're swinging all the way onto that side of the feminine. We're really working there, and then we're meeting ourselves in the middle. And then only then it comes to be able to, okay, how can I now strengthen or rebind the relationship with the inner masculine, who has been operating from a space that has been distorted by society. So then it's like we relearn how our own inner masculine can support the inner feminine, right? So how I relate to it is our inner feminine is like the passion and the fuel of our desires, right? She has all of the access to that. And then our inner masculine can come in and support to help structure that creation. And it's so important that we have that inner relationship, because for so long, when we're looking at things from the external, and I'm having difficult relationships with men, that is also a reflection of how I distrust or shame my own inner masculine, right? Because I've shamed the inner masculine because I used to be like, no, you're so direct. Oh, you're so strict. Oh, you're, like almost like it was like killing my vibe, It's like the feminine vibes just wants to be free, but we cannot have freedom without that sense of responsibility.
Sorry, I mute myself sometimes when I like shift in my seat because I feel like my microphone picks up everything. But thank you for saying that. That's really important. I'm
Mm,
gonna go back a little bit to what you shared because it feels like there's something there that I'd love to hear if you're willing about
yeah.
your relationship with your mom and how that
Mm,
relates to the disconnection and the relationship you had with the earth. I think a lot of
yeah,
people can relate and had physically or I'm sorry, emotionally absent mothers.
exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly how I experienced it. The mother was always felt like a barrier and a block. And I always felt like when I was younger, that part of my role, as you do as a child, kind of like I believed that my role was to save her. And the mother daughter dynamic is really interesting because what I sensed and felt from a really young age is that when my mum would hug me, she was embracing me as she did her own inner child. And so when I would receive a hug from her, all I felt was pain. Yeah, because
Mm.
she hadn't done her work with the inner child, and I was that representation. So it was almost like a smothering and also a triggering, right? Because it's like I want to hold you so tight because she didn't have that, and also when you look back at the how the mother wound gets perpetuated and why, because that really stems from the patriarchy and the disconnect from the feminine in the first place. So the betrayal that was felt along my mother line was something I have been healing, right? This is so deep. But it started with the betrayal I felt from my own mother. I felt like I was unable uh, to come to her for any kind of emotional support. It always felt like I had to be the hyper independent one, to be the strong one, almost be her mother, right? And I think so many of us can relate to that, like seeing the shattering of your own mother on an emotional level and feeling like you have to be their mother, and that dynamic is so awkward. And then it's awkward, I say awkward, but it's like it's just a strange dynamic. And then every time you're trying to be yourself, it triggers your mother because they didn't fulfill or have the ability to fulfill so much of their own life or desires that they wanted. So it creates this tension, and it's often an unspoken tension. And I lived that for many years. It's this unspoken tension where if I was ever in my joy, it would upset her, or if I was ever in pain, it was too much for her to meet because she hadn't touched the depth of her own pain. So it was like every kind of emotion had to be hidden.
Right. And it's very confusing, right? Because
Mm,
it's happening really it's like on a subtle level, like where our body is responding to it, our nervous system is responding to it, but when we're going through it, usually we
yeah,
don't understand it yet. Like, why does it feel like this? I don't know if you felt this way, but
yeah.
I'm resonating with everything you're saying. And
Mm,
it's almost like a repulsion. I felt like almost repulsed, and that's such a strange thing to experience
mm,
with your own mother and not know why.
yeah.
Yeah, it can be a journey into coming into understanding of, like, the dynamics and the patterns that were playing out and almost learning that it's not personal because it
Mhm,
can feel like, "What is happening?" And it's just very confusing. And you mentioned the betrayal wound and patriarchy,
mhm.
and I'm curious how you see that being connected.
I see it being connected because um, the patriarchal systems have created this a way in which women feel the need to compete. And that even means within mother-daughter, right? But within the systems, within corporates, is women are operating from a place of competing because we're always never made to feel good enough. So there is this element that we have to, I mean, I used to work in corporate and it was a very male dominated space. So I understand how it felt to feel like I needed to prove myself even more, work even harder, take on more, never say no, right? It's like all of this, like, yeah, I've got it, I can do it, without even listening to the inner rhythm of the body. It's like it's almost like a really deep rooted survival pattern in the nervous system that goes, if I don't take on and I don't do all of these things, then I will not survive. I will not belong. And it comes back to the wounds of belonging and love and being accepted into the tribe. And that's technically our tribe that's been created within patriarchal societies is that. So women are in this state of overriding their own systems to make sure they are at that same level. But our bodies are not meant to operate in the same way that men can keep that consistency of energy levels all throughout the month. We don't have that. And there's reasons for that.
Would you like to say a little more about the reasons for that?
Yeah, there's reasons for that because our cycle is pure medicine. Our cycles are when we connect with it in that way, we know when we have the most energy during our ovulation, and we know that that is our time of blooming and putting ourselves out there. Then we know that when we go into the luteal is when we can start to reflect on our entire past cycle and start to see where we crossed boundaries, what's actually, okay, did that work? Did that not work? Right? It's our reflection period. And then when we bleed, we allow ourselves to fully release. But when we are bleeding, we're in the void state, which is again, is the time where we have the deepest connection to source, and we can receive truth and deeper insights to then start again when it's follicular and we start to be in the ideas, the spring energy of, okay, I can do it all. And then we ovulate and we, and it's that process. And it's so important that we have connection to that because it's always showing us, every month, every week is just showing us. It's not about, oh, I did bad that month. It's not about shaming the self or going, no, it's just supporting. How can we be the most balanced? A balanced life.
Do you think it's possible to exist in a corporate world and stay connected to those cycles? I work with women and only women, and I have a lot of women that are in corporate positions. Yeah. And sometimes my instinct is to say no. And I know that that's like a big, kind of like a bold claim, but I don't know. My instinct is to say that it's not possible. What do you think?
I've been asked this question before on a podcast.
Oh, you did?
and it's a question where I also kind of go, like, I want to say yes. And I want to say that we are in more of a world now where this is spoken about so much more and that there is an understanding. However, I understand the demands. I understand the demands that come with corporate. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a role where you get to manage your schedule, then of course you can book in your meetings when you're ovulating and you can try your best, ultimate best to structure it. But what we can do, and if we do have certain control over managing our things, is if we can put something do something for a week and book in those meetings or times where you need to be seen, or then do that. But if it isn't the case, it's challenging. Really, it's challenging.
Yeah, it requires flexibility that not many people have in that world, unless you're in a position where, like you mentioned, you are in control of your schedule.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't see how it's possible if you're not, because you're at somebody's beck and call.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a lack of agency.
Yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like the only way that maybe this can change is the more we speak about the importance of this, and how, if that was honored within corporate companies, and it really was spoken about, and everyone was operating and moving towards their own inner rhythms, then everyone would benefit so much more, right? The
Yeah.
company would probably even make more money, right? If we're all
Mhm.
moving at the rhythms that suit us and are understanding each other in that way. I mean, that's what we're really here to bring back. Bring, that's how we're supposed to operate, to bring back harmony and balance into all of the ecosystems, including big corporate companies, because it's not about demolishing this. It's about how can we live in our modern world with the ancient wisdom that we know and really bridge it.
Do you think that there would have to be a rebuilding of the systems that we live in? I mean, I know we're speaking about it in terms of maybe if we continue to talk about this, then corporations will maybe make more space for this
Mm.
for women to have more agency or whatever. Is it possible? It's a part of me wants to say that big corporations would have to collapse in
Mm.
order for there to really be space for the feminine way of being.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you think?
I do feel like we're seeing many collapses.
Yeah.
And I feel like something is happening on so many levels. We can all feel it, which is why we're having this conversation right now, which is why women are becoming more aware and awake to these questions of there has to be another way. Like, and the younger generations, I'm seeing that so clearly. It's like the Gen Zs we're talking, they just have like a whole beautiful different way of being, which is they just don't understand the suffering. It's like, why would we suffer?
Mm,
And I really love to have that reflection, because it's always reminding me, is like, how do we put our needs first? Even if I'm in a corporate company, and even if I'm in these systems, yes, but how can I still ensure I'm getting my needs are met? And how can that be communicated in a way to whoever is running this, that if these are my skills, and it's about owning, again, it's about owning who we are, again, coming into that sense of power. It's like, I know my value here, and I know my value would be even more exponential if I was able, if I am honoring what I need to honor, which is myself.
mhm. So what did this look like for you practically? Because you were in a corporate setting, right?
Hmm.
So, like, what did it look like for you to start honoring your needs? And then how did that play out in terms of, like, did you leave? Like,
Hmm.
were you able to meet your needs while still in that setting?
Well, it's really interesting you say that, because what happened to me as to why I left the corporate role was actually um, something quite sexist, right? As I mentioned, I was in a very
Oh.
male dominated environment, and they actually said that I had to compete against the two other women within our roles, because there wasn't many women. There was only three of us. Had to compete against the other women for a managerial position, and that was when I straight away was just like, I'm not going to do that, because you have no problem promoting the men in the company just like that. But when it came to the women, it's like they couldn't make a decision, right? There wasn't a clear understanding of who could take the role. So we had to do it again, being put into this place of doing extra work, of extra proving. And so I just completely said, no, that's my out. Right. And I think
Mm,
from that moment, that's when I started understanding things a little bit differently. And also, after I left that company, I didn't have anything else lined up. I was just there was a fire in my belly that was just like, no, like, how could you possibly? So I just left. And then I was in many, many, many interviews after that. And I started noticing something about myself. These interview processes were showing me how I was going to interviews, and I knew exactly what the interviewer wanted me to be and to say. And I just started showing up. exactly as that to get the job. And then I would come home crying because I was like, what was that? Like, I wasn't even being authentic. I just knew what they needed, and I showed and presented myself in a way to meet what they needed. And it started to show me all of the masks that I was putting on. And it was such a really incredible process, right, to go through. I think I went to about 40 interviews. And I was like, I can't believe that
Wow.
I can
Did you
just
say
go in
40?
at least 40. Yeah. And it's like I just kept
Wow.
putting myself through it. I just kept going. And I would get all of the jobs. But and then I was like, had to say no. And then I was going through this internal battle of being unintegral because I was showing myself in this way that I wanted the job. And then I didn't really want the job, so it was literally like putting on the mask, coming home, taking off the mask, being in truth, being the clown. And I
Right.
was like, who is this person? And that's when I started those deeper questionings of like, how can I do that? Who am I? If I can, who, and it really took me into this space. And I did get another job, and it was in an office, and I was there for 2 weeks. And then I said, that's it. I'm not doing
You
this
quit?
anymore. I quit. Yeah. And I said, I will
Even
never
without
work in
having
an
a
office
plan?
again. Yeah. I quit. I said, I'm never going to work in an office again. And I was starting a tea company though back then. And it was called Spiral Tea, funny enough. But the tea in itself was what took me back to the feminine, because I was working with the earth, I was working with herbs, and it was a deeper remembrance, like on a lineage level, like where we all come from, every single woman, like it's in our blood that we know we have, back in our line, a herbalist.
Were you able to support yourself with the tea for moving
So
forward?
so I quit an actual full-time position, and I just took on temp roles where it didn't
Mm.
feel like I had a strong commitment to who I was working for. So on a mental front, I was disconnected. So I just turned up, did what I needed to do, and I left. But I didn't have this like strong identity to the role anymore. So that's what
Mhm.
started shifting for me. It was not like before when I was in the corporate, it was like, oh, this is who I am. I am my role, right? I'm a property
Mhm.
agent, because that's what I did. I worked in property. It was like, I'm a property
Right.
agent. So I just walk around, I'm a property agent. Right? but then when I was working for a temp role, I was like, no, it's a temp role, and I am creating a tea business. Like
Mhm.
this is what, yeah. So it was a different
Yeah, you
shift.
loosen that identity that you had an attachment to. When we have an identity shift, that's when everything begins to change. But sometimes it's a slow process. It doesn't happen all
Yeah.
at once, obviously.
Mm,
But what you
mm.
said about your interviews, and then basically I thought of like a chameleon, right? But this is like the almost magical um trait or quality to this is like the way that a woman can attune to her environment. It's so intuitive. It's like you just became what other people wanted you to be. And obviously like that's self-abandoning, but there's also like this magical quality here as well. And like what that could look like if we're using it in service to ourselves
Mhm.
instead of against ourselves.
Oof, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I started seeing, right? Which is why I was so called to starting my own. And I think whenever someone starts their own company, that in itself is like an initiation, because you start to have to start to build on so many of your own qualities and start to like let them take up space. Um, but I think that's what was going through my head. I was like, okay, if I have this kind of ability and I'm going to work for a company and I'm going to sell this or I'm going to do this, why can't I do that for myself? If I put all of that energy I would be putting into supporting that, then I'm going to just bring it back to myself. And, it's like also all those interviews showed me like qualities about myself, but in a flipped way. And so I think I love that you just touched on, the chameleon aspect, because that is one of the amazing things about the feminine when we start to know that we have access to all of these different archetypal energies, and that we can allow each one to come out and play whenever we want. And then it comes back to life as a game. How can we play within this game? And we need
Mm.
these archetypes. We need to feel the safety for each one to come out, but not being disconnected from our center and core, because we know who we are at our core and we have the backbone, and then everything gets to just take its place and its play. Again, coming back to how do we be in the modern world knowing who we are. But the difference is before you're operating from a place where you feel like you didn't have a choice. But when you go through this process, you're like, okay, I can choose that I'm
Mhm.
choosing. You're conscious, so you're choosing to be that right now. Okay, I'm aware, and this is my choice. And that
Mhm.
in itself is sovereignty. It's when you know and you have awareness of your own choice.
Mhm. What archetype do you feel women are most stuck in
The
collectively? Like
wound,
the shadow what
the
was that?
wounded maiden, the wounded maiden.
Yeah, which is not a sovereign space to be.
And
Do you wanna share more?
I see a lot of men stuck in the wounded maiden as well,
Mm.
especially
Mhm.
because within a generational bracket, a lot of men have been brought up by single mothers and have not had a strong father role, and have also learned to shame the inner masculine. So I also see a lot of men these days, especially maybe certain age groups, I don't know, but have operating from this wounded maiden. And the wounded maiden is the archetype where you are seeking love outside of yourself. You're seeking validation outside of yourself. And you will go to great lengths, right? Which means self abandonment, self betrayal. You'll go to all of the lengths because your main attachment is to secure love and connection outside of yourself.
Yeah. I love that you said that about men because it seems like there are more and more men people pleasing than ever before. I think it's Teal Swan,
Mm,
maybe, that talks about how it's like that swing of the pendulum, right? Like how the feminist movement came with like a lot of positives and benefits, but like we often have to swing the pendulum to the other side in order for there to be change, but we're doing that in a way that now men are becoming like demasculated and
mhm,
they're not initiating, they're not stepping into their power, and that can look like people pleasing. Like, almost like they're afraid of it. They're afraid of their own power. They're afraid of making choices and exercising agency. And I think a lot of the times I see this as a pattern too, like with men that are in that, they're they had a mother that was very controlling and smothering.
mhm.
So it's like the mother didn't give the boy space to make choices and
Yeah.
to feel into his power.
Yeah. And then unconsciously, they are constantly seeking the mother in relationships.
Yeah.
They're seeking out the mother,
Mhm.
um, which is what we see a lot of. And again, going back to the wounded maiden, it's the wounded maiden struggles to meet all of the different layers of emotion, right? Especially the ones that are most demonized, like their anger and even the shame, right? And it's like that that is the fall of, or the story I'm going to bring in the mythology now of Inanna. It's she, or Persephone, the wounded maiden. Just, and this is why we call, when we work in the feminine lens, we have to go through the descent that takes us to those places within ourselves where we hold the deepest pain, where we hold the deepest shadows that we've discarded from ourselves. But we all have to do that, and there is the biggest fear to that's what's been feared, because that's where our greatest power lies, and for both men and women, especially now, right? Especially now.
I think there was a connection issue because, like, I literally missed the last, like, 2 sentences you said. It kind of, like, went in and out, so and I feel like it was important, so if you don't mind, can you repeat that?
I feel like I was saying that the journey of Inanna, regarding the feminine, of going into the descent, where we have to access our deepest pain and our deepest wounds, because that's where our greatest power lies, and there's a journey that both men and women must go on.
Mhm. Great. I love this. This is a really good in for this conversation. So the language that I'm using, and I'm curious what your language is the dark feminine. Like, this is kind of our
Mhm.
journey into the dark feminine, where we have suppressed things like rage or anger and
Yeah.
boundaries and our ability to protect ourselves. In order to feel the full spectrum of our emotions, we have to reconnect with what I'm calling the dark feminine. And that's the descent, right? Into like this journey into the underworld. How do you see it? How do you see the dark feminine? Or maybe you have another like archetype or word for this. I'm curious your perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say the dark feminine as well. I would call
Mm,
her the dark feminine or the dark mother that
mm,
takes us, again, talking about how I shared at the beginning around the delayering. It's about the delayering and really allowing ourselves to access the times of anger that got suppressed, or the periods of pain that we didn't have a safety or in the right conditions to be able to feel that and enter into those places. And why we need to go there, for example, I'll share from my journey. My I could never project my voice. Okay, so I could never scream. I'd have lots of recurring throat issues where I would lose my voice as a teenager, especially.
mm,
And the deeper I went on the journey within the womb, right, when we go down into the depths of the womb and the descent there, and that's where our emotion, connection to our emotions lie. So accessing the anger that was there that I was unable to fully understand as a child, all that you were absorbing as a child and feeling, and everything in your environment, in your home environment, those things around you, what you can witness that you cannot make sense of yet, right? And it's still all there, and it's still all in the body, and it's still all being held. And when I allowed myself to go to that dark depths and liberate so much tightness and tension and numbness that was in the womb, that's the womb awakening was what activated and opened the throat.
mm,
And it's interesting because I say, right, our medicine lies in that which we resist, and our medicine lies in that which is often um the most challenging. So I couldn't speak, and now I heal with the voice. Right. Now
love
is I'm
this.
channeling through the voice.
What did that look like for you? And did you go in intentionally? Like how did that kind of unfold? And what did it look like when you were reconnecting with that? Like, were you like
Yeah.
like screaming or like, really expressing what was needing to be moved?
It's it's interesting because, when I'm referring to the journey, it's hard to talk about it linearly because it's not, because
Yeah.
each time I was understanding a new layer. But I'll
Yeah.
try to explain it in the most simplest way, but and maybe many women can relate to this. And actually we're seeing an uprise in endometriosis at the moment, and fibroids
Mm.
from younger ages. And I used to suffer immensely from menstrual pain from the starting point of my menses around 13 years old. I would be 3 days a week, 3 days a month. I'd be vomiting and I would have to come off
Oh,
school,
wow.
right? So it was really, really severe. And then, of course, I went on the pill because that's what we get told, right? The
Yeah.
gynecologist comes in, she goes, "Oh, we'll go on the pill." And then I was hemorrhaging for 8 months. And I was so ashamed and embarrassed. And I didn't tell anyone. I just was like bleeding. And I, just kept it to myself and kept taking the pill because that's what the doctor told me, take the pill. Then well, actually, there's a very important point I really want to touch on here, because this is also part of my awakening. And some women here will probably relate to this, and if this happened to them. But I actually came off the pill and then I fell pregnant
Mm,
and I had an abortion. But it was that process of potentially becoming a mother that awakened something in me that went, well, how could I mother a child if I can't mother myself?
mm.
And then after that process, I went back on contraception, and it was a different contraception. It was the implant. And my body again went through so many different changes. I was having so much water weight. And then eventually I came off everything, and my pain returned. I mean, I always had pain still, even on contraception. It just subsided a little bit, but there was still always strong pain. But then when I came off and I was deepening into this journey, and the pain would come back. But there was one pivotal moment where I really remember it, and this is to answer your question, like what was that turning point? I had just had enough, and I kind of was like already into this work a little bit. I was with the herbs, and I was starting to do more meditation, and my awareness was there, and I remember the day I was in so much deep pain, and I was just that I would scream with pain, and I would create pain in different parts of my body so it would move away from just all that one area where the wound was. But this particular day, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to sit and lay down, and I'm going to put my hands there, and I'm going to say, I'm hearing you. I love, and I just started repeating, I love you. I'm listening. Just all of this, like, just started coming out. And then I remember kind of like it feeling like it was softening. And I was like, okay, this is okay. We're creating a relationship. Whereas before it was shamed, right? Like, oh no, not that time of the month again. And even that comes from the mother, like the mother kind of disregarding that you're on your bleed. Like, oh yeah, it's just your, and you kind of get spoken to like that, right? It's like, oh yeah, just you're on your bleed. It's okay. Um, so I took it into my own hands. I'm starting to build this relationship. And then I went to the toilet, and then I had this blackout because I was in so much pain. And then I just had this, like, it was softening, but I went into this blackout, and I remember seeing this black tunnel. And then all I kept hearing was, this is where your medicine lies. This is where your medicine lies. This is what you're here to teach. And I was like in this frenzy, and I came out, and then it was like from that day, I just like got every single possible book I could on like womb healing, on all of it. Right. And I was just deep into the reading material, and and who I could support me with anything to do with womb healing, because I didn't even
Wow.
know that was a thing. Most women don't know that's a
Wow.
thing, right?
Yeah. Let me know if this is how you see it or relate to it, but it almost feels like that happened because you literally just listened to it finally. You were
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to stop pushing you away and just listen to what's here.
Yeah.
And then you received a really important message about your
Yeah.
purpose because it's all connected. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And also about the abortion, too, because I imagine that was such a scary experience. And nowadays, because of the current state of, policing and controlling women's bodies, I know a lot of women feel so much shame around abortions. And
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that and just being a safe space for that. Um, why do you think you had a really hard experience with your period? Some women don't, and I'm just curious how you see that, because like I was severely disconnected with my body, with my
Mm.
femininity, like all of the things that we've been talking about relating to. But I never had a I never had period pain. Like I never suffered with my menstrual cycle. It was always like
Mm.
28 days on the clock. Never really had cramps. And I just, sometimes I wonder why. I don't know if you have any thoughts or ideas about that.
I feel like there's many things that can contribute to hormonal imbalance, because ultimately it's hormonal imbalance, and there's many things that we can do, right? Are we exercising regularly? Like, right, I wasn't a regular exerciser for simple things. And also it can be around the foods that you eat. Are you really eating the right foods for your body?
See, but that's
Because
the
the more
thing. Like I wasn't
you were
doing
doing.
anything. My nervous system was so dysregulated. I was processing so much trauma. Like wasn't like everything was off, but for some reason my
Mm.
period was just like never an issue. And so I find that strange.
Well, like, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I guess
It's
so.
but maybe I don't know. For me, there was an inner rejection of the feminine,
Hmm.
a deep inner rejection of the feminine, because I felt rejected by my mother, and she held that with her mother. And there was such a strong, there was, even my mum had terrible periods. Her mum did, right? That was also generational. So there's many factors, because I almost feel like I kind of came in to break that cycle. of
Mm-hmm.
the painful periods, because my mum would just go through it and she would always just say to me, oh yeah, I had that too. And her grandmother, like my grandmother, her mother would do the same thing. Oh yeah, I had that too.
Hmm.
No one ever stops to question, okay, but what if we don't have that? Maybe it's not
Right.
okay. It's just like, why is not okay to have that?
Yeah. So it's interesting because painful periods are not, I don't know if I want to use the word normal, but like they don't have to be painful. And it, it's a sign and a symbol that something is happening that
Mm.
needs your attention. Would you say you agree with that?
Yeah, and I feel like also from my aspect, the abuse element, right, was also speaking loud. Like there was so much that needed clearing there because I abused my body
Hmm.
hugely.
Yeah. See, I'm going to have to like research this because for some reason I'm like, my mind is gripping. It wants to understand the ancestral trauma that was passed down through my lineage. So much
Mm.
sexual abuse. I don't
But
have the
maybe it came
answers,
through
and
in
that's okay.
and that's okay, yeah, but maybe it came
Yeah.
through in other ways.
You have an offering. I cannot remember what it's called, but I was looking at your website. Do you want to say something about that? It has to do with the womb and I think cyclical intelligence. Is that right?
I have a few offerings.
Okay.
I have the from fear to feminine freedom, which maybe would be more suitable for your audience because it's really women that are awakening to wanting to reconnect with their womb, understand their body's senses and their emotions and how to use it as their own medicine. And I say from fear to feminine freedom because it's like we are eradicating the fear of the unknown, the fear of the darkness, and we're entering into that, which is the awakening of the feminine, because we go into all of the shadow. We go there so we can alchemize it, which is what the feminine does so beautifully and naturally.
Mm. How do you support women in that journey? Like, what would
Hmm.
that look like?
So I work with the embodied delayering. So I am an embodiment coach. So everything that we move through is through our body's wisdom. So it's every time we are speaking, we are coming away from the thoughts of the mind of what the mind's patterning is, and we're listening to how our body is responding to what we're moving through. So where are the patterns lying in the body? And we do something that's unraveling. So when we find where a block is felt, in the process, we're attuning to our body's sensations. Like when we're working with difficult emotions, we start to feel where they are actually residing in the body. And we go there and we give it the full expression that it needs. We give it its, maybe even an archetype, we give it a shape, or we give it its expression so that it can move. Something that could have been stuck for years, right? We give it its space to move. And sometimes I also bring in the shamanic aspect and support the clearing through sound frequency, because sounds will help break up stagnant emotion to help move it and flow. So it's kind of a combination between that and the shamanic work all in one. But we work with deep patternings. So belief systems and our patterns to help rewire and reshape those.
Mm. When you say shamanic, you're speaking about like a sound journeying. Is that how you're relating to
So
shamanism?
shamanic is so vast, but I
Yeah.
love to kind of bring the fact that shamanic work is feminine work. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's of the earth. So
Hmm.
we work with and we meet exactly what is needed in that moment. We're not trying to, we're not detectives, and we're going like we're meeting with what you are coming to in that moment and finding the root of where that is, like, because there's always, everything is intertwined and interconnected. And then the shamanic work can often bring in the journeys of the soul journey. So we might go into bringing in soul fragments or soul parts
Hmm.
from this lifetime, but also past lives, and also ancestral healing as well. So it's kind of a huge multi-dimensional approach, really, to transformation.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'm a therapist, and are you familiar with internal family systems?
Yes, the family
Like, this is,
constellation.
like, what
I've s
shamans have been doing. Parts work is it's shamanism, it's soul retrieval.
yes.
So,
Mhm.
it's just yeah. So powerful. Like, that
Yeah,
work is so powerful.
yeah.
Yeah.
It bypasses the logical mind,
Mhm.
and goes straight to the root.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Any other offerings or anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would love to share that, for magical, amazing medicine women that are here navigating how to, or have already woken to the feminine and they're, starting their navigation in this world through this lens. I have another offering called Ignite, which supports in your navigation, because sometimes when we awaken in this way, there's like we start to see things so differently, and don't understand how to be in the world anymore. And I often see, and I went through this myself, the experience of like wanting to hermit or isolate. And I really want to support women to navigate, everyday life through helping them understand or make sense of what they're going through, to really just be the mirror from where I've journeyed.
I love that. What
Mm.
does that look like? Is it
So
co
so
more
it
community?
no, Ignite is still one to one. We would
Mhm.
meet every
Oh,
week,
okay.
and it's like a deeper container. Yeah, they're both
Gotcha.
containers.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And so
Yeah.
I'll link everything below in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Anything else you'd like to leave us with?
I would love to leave everyone with one of my mottos: hold the vision and ride the waves.
Mm.
This
I
is really
love
this
that.
has really just kept me going with everything, because
Hold the
we ride the
vision and
emotional
ride the
waves, but
waves.
never lose sight of the vision.
Yeah. It's almost like the vision becomes the anchor.
Yeah. And in
Mm.
such an uncertain world, we must be the anchor.
Yes. I love that.
Mm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, you really do embody your work. I can feel that from you,
Mm.
and I really appreciate it.
Thank you
So
so
thank you,
much. It's
Francesca, for this
it's been a
conversation.
pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.